Hello everyone, welcome back to Creative Chaos. This is going to be a two-parter, and so today we're going to make the vase that we're going to eventually put my forever plant in. And I am so nervous to start the plant, so I am really glad that this is the first part. It comes with, now I'm doing all of this at 2 times the speed, just so you know, because even though I cut out a ton of what I was doing, it still looked like I was taking forever to make this happen. Um, so anyways, we're going to move some of this out of the way. And then this is the vase. It's very rough on the outside, good for taking the glue. These are the instructions. I won't make you sit there while I read through it all. This is the glue, and then these are the pieces. And unlike the last mosaic I did with this same company, these actually look like the pieces on the outside of the box, and so, which I was really glad about. And so I decided to separate them into their 3 different colors. There's a red almost, and I want to do the same pattern. I want to do the same pattern that's on the box. So there's a kind of a red color, and then a dark pink, and then a light pink. So I'm going to put my gloves on, and these gloves I have really wide hands, and so they're not very big, and these gloves were big on my hands, so I can't imagine trying to put these gloves on with anybody with tiny hands. Here I cut the tip of the glue off and think that I did a good enough job, and then it's not coming out, and so I take a look at it and I'm like, I guess it goes down lower than I thought. So of course she cut the tip off without waiting for the glue to go down, and then the glue just spews out the side. So I'm trying to rescue some of that glue. Now if you put a lot of glue on your piece, it's going to slide around for a few seconds. So you definitely want to not put a huge dollop on there. You want just a tiny little bit. But I was trying to rescue the glue that had kind of fallen out. Now I'm placing this up because I'm placing the vase up and not just letting it roll, because I want the bottom layer to sit so that it will sit comfortably on a shelf or on the top of my piano, so to say. So here's the first layer done, and then we start turning them sideways into little diamonds. And it's supposed to sit a little bit above there we go. And so the glue, like I said, it kind of slides around a little bit at first, but then it sticks quite quickly. It dries a lot faster than a lot of glue that excuse me, that I have dealt with. And so we're just going to start building up. I want it to sit a little bit above the bottom row so that the grout has somewhere to go into. So, and they're not going to line up perfectly one above each of the bottom row, just because when it's a square, it's tinier, it's thinner than it is when it's a diamond size. So it's not going to, you're not going to have it line up beautifully every single time. So just so you're aware, and it gives you enough time to play with it. In fact, if I wanted to go back and rehandle those first ones, I would still be able to do that. It's remarkably forgiving glue. So there's kind of a little dollop example. Now we're going to set the second row inside the first row, but still with enough room for the grout to get into. So there's my second one. I really had to mess with it, really did. And that's the nice thing, is that you do have time to play with it. Total, I think this took me about 2.5 hours to do. Forgive me, my lungs always feel spongy first thing in the morning after I've had my CPAP machine on. Now we're going to move on to, I've done the second row and the third row. Now we're going to move on to this darker pink. And I love that right away, even on camera, you can see a difference between the two colors. So we're just trying to place them gently in between, but like I said, giving it enough room for the grout to be able to get into. And sometimes you'll get little strings or little gatherings, I don't know what you would call them, of glue, and they swipe right off. Or I would blow on them and they would blow right off. So you're good either way. They don't stay on there. And even if they did, they'd be covered up by either the glass pieces or by the grout. So there's no worries there. Now this vase is really quite big in the... Oh, and I realized right there I had accidentally grabbed a red one. And so as you saw, I was able to take the red one off, and there was still enough glue left on that I was able to just replace it with one of the pink ones. And so it was really quite nice. Now we're moving on to the light pink. At first I was impatient, and I'm always like this when I start a new project. I'm impatient because it's not going fast. I just want it to go fast, and then it doesn't. But then as you get into it, it's just so soothing and mesmerizing, and just being able to place every piece, maybe not as beautifully as they do in the picture, but it's, it's my creation. And then they only do 2 rows of the light pink, and then the third row is going back to the squares. And so that's what we're doing now. We're just going to finish up this row, and I'm going to show you. So as we get close to the end, I begin to realize that there's not going to be quite enough space for the last one. And see, there's room there, but not quite enough to have the in and then have the grout. So I go back a few paces, and I can still move things over because the glue is that forgiving. So I really like, as you can tell, I really like the glue in this set. And we place the last piece. All right. Now there really was plenty of the light pink left over if I had needed to do another row. The only thing that I didn't like was that I wish they had had some half pieces to fill in those big giant spaces. I think that would have made it even better. So I mixed together the grout to the consistency of toothpaste, and unlike the last set, they actually gave me measurements to do on this one, and so that helped a lot. The last set meaning the tray that I did. And then it really is just me sitting here using my finger to fill in. Now, it didn't go beautifully at the moment when you have to get everything, get the water and start removing the grout along the top of the tiles. I missed a lot of spaces, and there were bubbles that I didn't know about, and so that was kind of sad. And so it's definitely not perfect, which I am one of those people that I want to do things perfectly. Including, you can see I made a mess of my little piece of fabric there. So that's when I thought, oh, bring over the instructions and we can place it on there if we need to. So I ended up with leftover grout this time around, which was nice. If I needed to go in and do more, I could, but decided not to, because this really did cover everything. As far as I could tell, it just covered it absolutely beautifully. So, and then you're supposed to leave it for about 20 minutes. That allows the grout to really start to harden in between the pieces without accidentally taking everything. And they didn't explain that when I did my tray, that you were supposed to leave it for a good 20 minutes first. And so I went in immediately and started trying to take some of it out, and that was a mess. And so this ended up being a lot easier, although I still, even though just because the bowl was so tiny, I ended up taking it over to my sink so that I didn't like wash it down the sink. It was just an easier way to be able to, because I don't want grout down my sink. That's the last thing we need. So I took it over there to really finish it off. But oh, I love how it turned out. Just wait until you see. Would I do this project again? Absolutely. I love the vase. In fact, I would love to be able to find the pieces and just like find a little vase that I could work on, and find glass pieces and keep that little thing of glue and just keep going. So in any case, I hope you guys have a great day and make it a great week, and we will see you next week for part 2.